In this video, we're gonna start increasing the difficulty by adding a couple new objects, the asteroid and the shooting enemy. We're also going to add a health to the enemy that we can use to, if we wanted to adjust it to make the enemies more difficult or take longer to kill. And then we're going to adjust our spawn script so that it continues to still spawn those new enemies. Alright, let's jump on in. Alright, welcome back, folks. So in this video we're going to be making a few more obstacles for a player, just because right now with just the random enemy that doesn't do anything, the game kind of feels a little flat, a little one-dimensional. So we're going to adjust the difficulty by adding an asteroid that can be dodged or exploded, and then we're going to add an enemy that also shoots periodically in the direction that it's going. So let's get started. First things first, I did move the player over here to the prefabs. I'm looking ahead. I don't see too many more adjustments we're going to need to make. We'll do some effects so that there's a thruster later on, but we can always apply that to the prefab later. So go ahead, if you haven't done so already, move your player over here to that prefabs folder, and then get ready to follow along. So what we're going to need to do is open up our enemy script. So open up your base enemy controller. We're going to add a few things to it. I also added a header for enemy settings, just to keep things consistent and tidy. We're going to add a public float. It's going to be called health. It's going to equal to 1. You can save that, and then once it updates, you'll see it up here on your enemy. But we need to, right now what happens is when our enemy laser hits our enemy, then it just destroys the enemy, and that's not what we want. So what we're going to end up doing is changing this whole code altogether, and then it's going to look something like this. Now as you see, the player add score went away, so we need to add that back. So we're going to say player controller dot add score and then 10. There we go. I think that's it for that one. So basically what happens is our laser still gets destroyed. Our health, right, it subtracts 1 from the enemy health because we set health to 1. So now we can adjust the health of an enemy, so our shooting enemy can have a health of 1 or 5 or whatever. And then we still, once the health reaches 0 or goes below 0, then we're going to destroy the enemy game object and add the score to the player score. Alright, so let's go ahead and back to Unity, let that all compile, and right click in our hierarchy, go to create 2D object, sprites. We'll go with a circle and name it Asteroid. This is going to hold our asteroid sprite. So in our art enemy folder, there is this asteroids sprite sheet. It's a bunch of different asteroids sizes that you can use. I'm just going to keep things simple. Click on the main asteroid. We're going to change this to point. I'm going to leave the pixels per unit at 100, because if I lower it, it's going to increase the size, and I'm fine with this size as it is. What I am going to do is, press apply, because I forgot to press apply. Click on our asteroid, just drag this into our sprite render component where it says sprite, circle, drop it right there, and now you see that it turns into that. We are going to need to add a couple of components to it. Let's go with a circle collider 2D, and then zoom in on that by pressing the F key. I'll probably lower this down to 0.5, 0.6 is good. Alright, and we're going to add another component, and this is going to be a rigid body 2D. We're going to make that kinematic, and just because let's go ahead and shorten that up. We don't need that, and there we go. Now let us grab our enemy script and throw that on there, and I'm gonna go ahead and adjust the rotation on this because I think it's gonna float up otherwise because of how it was written for the base enemy. Let's press play and test it out, dope, and see. Alright, there we go. And now let's see, does it didn't look like it hit our, like it affected our player any. It does get destroyed though, so that's good. And I think it didn't affect the mess with the player because we didn't tag it as enemy, and that's what it's looking for. So now if we use it and hit our player with it or run into it, it should lower a life from the player. And there we go. Alright, perfect. Go ahead and save that. That's all well and good now, so we can go ahead and drag that asteroid into our prefabs. And now let's delete that from our scene and get started on our shooting enemy. Alright, so for our shooting enemy, I guess first we're going to need to create the laser for it. So let's right click in our hierarchy, go to 2D object, sprites, and then capsule. And we already used blue for the player laser, so let's go ahead and look at our effects, and we're going to probably use this red one. So open up your sprite render, drop this red one into the capsule. Let's go ahead and adjust the main sprite sheet just like before. Let's go with 32 for the pixels per unit. That's what we did, I believe, with the player. I'll double check it in a minute. Filter mode, point, no filter, apply. Oh no, we left the player one as 100. Alright, so then let's just go back to 100 and we'll see how that looks. If we need to adjust them, then we'll adjust them. So that's fine. Alright, let's see here. With our capsule, let's go ahead and change the name to enemy laser. We need to create a tag for it, so click on the drop down that says untagged, go to add tag. We're going to press that plus sign and type in enemy laser to create the new tag. Click back on your laser game object and add that tag so we don't forget to later on. And we need to add a few things here. So we're going to need a rigid body 2D. That's going to need to be kinematic. And we can close that up because that's the only change we need for that. Add a component. We're going to go to capsule collider 2D. We're going to make it a trigger. We are going to adjust the Z direction for it. And that should be about it aside from adding the script. So let's create our script. Create mono behavior script, and we're going to type in enemy laser, and then we're just going to open that up, and then let's go ahead and paste in our code. Right, so we have our public float, which is going to be the speed, right, of the laser, and then in our update we're going to have this guy right here. So we got our float, which is speed, which is going to be 8 frames per second. And then add an extra curly bracket in there. In our update function, we're going to have transform translate. We're going to have vector3.up because we adjusted the sprite so that it would be facing downward. So we need to do vector3.up instead of .down. It's going to multiply that by the speed, and time.delta time to move it along the game space. And then if the position of the Y of the laser reaches lower than -8, then it's going to destroy itself. Next thing is, what if it hits something called the player? Well, If it does, we're going to use this void on trigger enter 2D. It's going to look for the tag player, and if it finds it, it's going to look for inside that player game object for the player controller script, and if it finds it, then it's going to look for this damage script or function, and it's going to run it, which is this guy right here on our player controller, and then it's going to destroy. It's going to run the damage script. Once it runs the damage script, it's going to destroy itself. The laser is. So go ahead and save that. And if you didn't, then let's go ahead and click on our laser in the hierarchy, because I did not, and drag the enemy laser over there where it needs to be onto the enemy laser. So enemy laser script to the enemy laser. And let's see here. Where are you in relation to the player? All the way up there. Let's just bring it down here and let's see what happens when we press play. That works. It hit the player, destroyed itself, and removed a life. So everything is working the way it needs to. Let's go ahead and drag this over into our prefabs folder. Then we can remove that from the scene and actually start on the enemy shooting ship. For our enemy shooting ship, let's go ahead and go to over here into our hierarchy panel, right click, 2D object sprites, and we're going to go to square. We're going to name this shooting enemy. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and, you know, I just realized I'm creating all these and none of these are zeroed out. So let's go ahead real quick into our, and zero these prefabs out, starting with our asteroid, and then our laser, there we go. Player can stay the way it is. Alright. Control S to save. Take our shooting enemy. We're going to shoot 0 that out. And with our sprite render component open, we're going to drag in an enemy. Not that one, because that's the asteroid. We can do that one. That should be fine. Let's see, so I'm going to use this idle drone purple enemy. I'm going to first adjust the pixels per unit so that it's 32, adjust the filter mode to point so that it doesn't have that blurry anti-aliasing, and then click back on the shooting enemy and drag this sprite into where it says square. So if you zoom in on it, then you'll see what it looks like. It's also a bit larger than the player, so that's good too. Because of how things are written, we're going to go ahead and switch the Z to 180, and let's start adding our components. We're going to need a circle collider 2D. Pop that open and make it a trigger. We're also going to need a rigid body 2D. We're going to need to pop that open and make that kinematic. We can close those up. Actually, you know what? That circle is pretty large, so let's change the radius of that circle to 0.4. Let's see. Yeah, that looks alright. 0.4 looks fine. Make sure you tag the enemy, the shooting enemy, as enemy, and then we need to add our script. So in our scripts folder, right click, create mono behavior script, name it shooting enemy, and go ahead and drag that onto our shooting enemy and then open it up. Just like so. For the most part, this is going to be the same logic as our base enemy controller. So I'm going to actually go ahead and copy all of it from the base enemy controller to the shooting enemy controller, and then we're just gonna adjust a few things here. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a variable that's going to be a reference to our enemy laser prefab. And then the next thing I'm going to do is it's going to be down here. So I'm going to add this IE numerator for the fire routine. I'm going to put it that's all the trigger logic. Let's go right here. So you can see here IE numerator is red. That's because up here at the top I forgot to put in using system.collections. So Unity had no idea what to do with this IE numerator until I put that in there. So we got this. So here's what we need to do here. We're going to change this quaternion.identity, and it's going to be actually enemy laser prefab dot transform dot rotation. That way it actually moves downward and it's facing downward. And then I'm trying to see if there's anything else I need to change. I'm going to change the score to make it 20. Since it is a shooting enemy, it should be a higher score. Alright, so here's what we did. Everything is basically the same as the base enemy object, with the exception of really two major things. I added a reference to the game object that's going to be the laser prefab. I created a coroutine using IE numerator and called it fire routine. It's going to wait for a few seconds, and while it's true, so while it's still spawning basically, while it's active rather, while this shooting enemy is active, it's going to wait for a random amount of seconds, between 1 and 3 seconds, and then it's going to spawn a laser just below the enemy ship. I think minus 0.8 is going to be a little low, so I may change that, but besides that, it's going to instantiate the laser prefab at the position and be affected by the prefab's own rotation. Now, the one thing I do need to do is I need to start that coroutine, so I'm going to need to, in our start function, add start coroutine fire routine. Let that save and compile. Now you'll see that it's updated here in our shooting enemy script. We need to add that enemy laser prefab. Now I'm going to go ahead and move this shooting enemy up, and we'll just say up into the left a little bit, so we can just see how it moves and if it fires in the right direction. It is, and it did fire. It just fired a little late, so what I'm going to need to do is probably adjust the speed of it. We'll have it slow down to about 2, but it looks like everything is working, so let's see. Yep, and it's firing correctly. It destroys, and if I crash into it, I should remove a life and kill it as well. And it did. There we go. Alright, next let's go ahead and drag that shooting enemy into our prefabs. Alright, save your work. And next we're going to update the SpawnManager so that it spawns both the asteroid and the enemy. Alright, now it's time to update our SpawnManager. So let's go ahead and take our shooting enemy and just remove that from the scene. Something I also forgot to do is zero out the positional data for the shooting enemy. So in your prefabs folder, if you want to do that, click on your shooting enemy, zero out the X and the Y. That way it's at the origin, and there won't be anything funky when the SpawnManager spawns it. Alright, let's open up our SpawnManager script. So go to Scripts, double click on SpawnManager, and we're going to make a few adjustments to this. Go ahead and open up our SpawnManager script. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some references for these new obstacles. So let's go ahead and make this a little nicer and neater by adding a header to it as well. So header, and that's going to be we'll call it spawnable objects. So what we did, what I did is added two new game object references, one for the asteroid, one for the shooting enemy. Next thing we need to do is we're gonna have it roll basically a digital dice, right? And it's gonna be either 0 or 1. And based on what it rolls is going to be what it spawns. It's going to basically give it a 50-50 chance of spawning. So this is going to go in place of this. We're just going to delete this instantiate here, and then paste this in. So there we go. So we have this. It's going to roll a it's basically going to be 0 or 1, and it's going to be if it gets a 0, it's going to be spawn the regular enemy. Otherwise, if it's anything that's not 0, it's going to spawn this shooting enemy prefab at their respective rotations. Next thing we need to do is we're going to create a reference to our coroutine for our asteroid. So what's going to happen is this IE numerator, it's going to wait for 5 seconds, and then as long as stop spawning is still equal to false, it's going to basically do the same thing as the previous iteration of this enemy coroutine is going to do. And it's going to spawn the enemy at a random X range, and then but at a consistent Y is 7. And then it's going to spawn the asteroid at that new position according to its rotation, and then every 8 to 12 seconds, right, is when it's going to spawn again. That way it's not flooded with asteroids. Now, in order to get all that working, we need to add this coroutine up at the top of our script. In the start menu, our method, start coroutine, spawn asteroid routine. Don't forget your semicolon at the end. So if we save all that, go back to Unity, click on your SpawnManager, and now we have slots for the asteroid and the shooting enemy. So let's drag those in. Asteroid from the prefabs folder goes into the SpawnManager asteroid slot, and our shooting enemy goes into the shooting enemy slot. Let's Control S to save and press play and see and make sure that all that works. So I'm just gonna be looking over here. There's our orange base enemy still going. There's the asteroid. There's the shooting enemy, and it's shooting. I am not liking where the laser prefab is going, or how far out it's spawning. So for the shooting enemy, for me personally, I'm gonna change this fire routine so that it's negative 0.5 F. Just a personal preference. I just feel that it's spawning too far away from the ship, but it shouldn't affect anything. We'll just double check it to make sure. There we go, that's better. Now it looks like it's actually coming from the enemy ship instead of just some random invisible point in space. Alright. So there's that for this video. In the next video, we're going to be increasing the difficulty more by every 50 or 100 points or so on the scoreboard. Then it's going to increase the respawn rate by a certain amount, probably by 0.1, or increase the spawn rate by 0.1. Increase or decrease, whichever one is going to make, it's going to decrease the number for the spawn rate, which is going to make it spawn faster, is what I'm trying to say. So until then, keep learning, keep building. I'll see you in the next video.